Hey guys, I'm going to be showing you guys how to swap a motor from this 1995 12 valve to another 1995 12 valve. I picked this truck up. The cab is pretty smashed on it, but the drivetrain is good. The motor shifts good, or transmission shifts good, the motor runs good. And I have another truck that's rust free, and it's a dually. It's black, and I'll show you it here in a minute. But it's in really good shape, and but it doesn't have a motor or transmission, so I'll just use this motor and transmission, put it in that one, and we should have a good truck. As you can see, this truck it's pretty crusty. It's pretty terrible, but it is, you know, a 1995 there, so it's kind of to be expected. But the other one's actually in really good shape, and I'll show you here in a minute. Yeah, the door is pretty, but yeah, a tree fell on it. It's from in a tornado. But, yep, pretty complete. Other than that, the windshield's smashed, and this door panel's gone, the bed's gone, but everything else is there. So but yeah, I'll try to be just showing you guys how to do everything. First thing I'm gonna do is just pull the hood off, and then I'll show you guys what's next after that. Alrighty guys, here's the other truck that I'll be swapping that other motor into. This truck is also a 95. This one is a dual rear wheel, but it's extended cab, long bed. And this truck is actually in really good shape. Doesn't have a rear bumper on it, but that's the only thing it's missing really. I have the other fenders and front clip and stuff in the bed. But yeah, as you can see, like the frame on this one is freaking clean. It's a really nice truck. I just need to, it's a little dirty right now, but other than that, it's not bad. As you can see, no motor or transmission in it. I'm gonna clean up the firewall and stuff before I put the other motor in it. And the other motor, I'm gonna reseal it. I'll put new seals and stuff on it, that way it's not leaking anymore before I put it down in here. So hopefully it turns out good. I'll let y'all know whenever I get the other stuff done, and I'll show it to you putting back in this one. So to start this off, I just pulled the hood off. There's just two nuts here and here. They're 13 millimeter. I just like to have the hood off and out of the way. That way it doesn't get damaged when I'm trying to pull the motor out. And then I think I'm even gonna go ahead and pull these fenders off. So there's just bolts here, and then like there's a few more. I think that's for the hood latch, but there's some down here too. And then I'll just get the whole front clip pulled off. Since this is a junk truck, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull all the parts off of it. So I'll have the whole front clip off of it. That way it just makes it easier. After I get all this off of it and kind of get most of the stuff cleared off the motor, I'll probably go underneath and then pull the transmission and transfer case and drive shaft. So far we just pulled the bumper off. There was a bolt here, and then there was 3 nuts here. Those were 18 mil. Then we got the coolant draining over here, and we're gonna go ahead and get the intercooler pulled out and the radiator pulled out after that drains. Yep. So when the coolant's just running out real slow like this, sometimes I'll just take an air hose and I'll pinch this off here. Beautiful. I just pinch this off like this. Helps just get some of that coolant out of the system. Make sure you don't make as big of a mess. Another thing I like to do is just mark everything. I just marked this ground, and it was grounded actually on the bumper, or one of the bumper supports. It really helps later, especially with your grounds. You don't want to forget a ground, and then you'll just be chasing everything everywhere. Yep. Just got the fan shroud bolts out. It's pretty annoying to get this out. This slides down in these slots here, and got these wires plugged into the bottom of it. This is your windshield wiper fluid reservoir, and it hides one of your fan shroud bolts behind here, so it's pretty annoying to get out, but finally I got it to pop up. I just had to slide these tabs forward and then get it to slide up out of there. Yeah, once we get that separated now, we can go ahead and pull the radiator out, and then should be able to keep moving. This is pretty funny. Just found somebody's long lost 10mm wrench just down inside underneath the radiator. Just funny. After we got the radiator out now and the intercooler out, we're gonna go ahead and take this front support off. Looks like we've got some 13mm bolts that bolt to this fender here. We'll go ahead and take those out. There's some on both sides. And then we should be pretty good. We're making good headway. So the last thing that was holding this front doghouse. I'll wait till he's done. There we go. Okay. There's some 19mm bolts that were held into the bottom of here. Took them out, and then now the thing's free. So, now that we got that front doghouse piece off, we're gonna go ahead and just start clearing everything else off the motor. So we'll start getting like these intercooler tubes off, and the air intake box, this radiator hose, and just all the rest of the things, coolant hoses and stuff like that. We'll just get all that disconnected, and then we'll go into the truck and start pulling trains and stuff. So we got all the wiring harness pulled back. If you need to, I would mark everything. I'm pretty familiar with this, so I know that's a grid heater, and this is, crank sensor. But yeah, if you need to, mark everything. But as for me, I don't really need to, so I'll just pull it back, set it off to the side to where all we have is mainly just the motor here. We'll need to disconnect those coolant hoses, but besides that, most everything is pulled back. Last thing we got to do is disconnect the trans and transfer case, and then yeah, we should be good. Should be ready to be. And then we'll just grab the motor mount bolts, of course, and then we should be able to just yank this thing out. Should be good. Alrighty, now we actually have everything disconnected. One thing I forgot to mention was the AC line. You'll need this special tool here. You just clamp it around there and then slide it up onto it, and then yeah, then you just pull down on it and it comes right out. And then yeah, I disconnected the heater core hoses, and then also the downpipe. I had to disconnect it, and then power steering lines. But after that, should be good now. Now I'm gonna move back to the trans. Walk around here. And go ahead and disconnect the drive shaft first. Those are just 8mm bolts. Then after that, we'll start pulling the transfer case out. And then the front drive shaft out. And then we'll start working on the transmission after that. Alright guys, I just took out the skid plate. It's over there. Just a nut there, and then a nut on this other side, and then 2 bolts that go in up there. Next I'm gonna put a jack under this, and then I'm gonna start undoing these bolts up here, and these nuts under here. So, and then after that, after I get that out, then I'm gonna get my drive shaft bolts out. Just got the drive shaft out. This one is a 2-piece drive shaft. There was 2 bolts that went in from the top up here, and then it ran up to the transfer case there. Just pulled both of them out. They're sitting over there. And then now we'll move on to the skid plate up front. Alright, so we got the cross member out. I suggest taking these 2 nuts out first, and then taking these bolts out. Just they're 13mm bolt on the inside, and then a nut, it's a 15mm nut on the outside, and those are also 15mm. This thing was a real big pain to get out. We had to beat and bang on it to get it out. What we finally ended up doing was taking out this line, which these were attached here onto the cross member, so you'll have to disconnect them too. We had to take that out, and then undo that bolt over there and pull that line down, and then smack the cross member forward to where it got off of those plates. It gave it enough room to drop down. I don't know if they're not normally that tight, but this one was. So if you guys end up having to do that, that's how you do it if they're that tight. Yep. Alrighty, we just got the front drive shaft out. These are 5/8 on this side and then 10mm on this side. I don't know why they're 5/8. It might be 16mm too, but I feel like 5/8 fits them better. I just the way I do it is I undo 2 of them on the bottom of it, and then I jack up the front end, roll the motor over, or roll the wheels over to where the next 2 are on the bottom. Then I drop it back down, and then I break those loose. But yep, now we're going to move on to just going ahead and disconnecting all the transfer case nuts, and then just after we get the transfer case out, we'll just start disconnecting all of these transmission lines and plugs. Yep. So before you can take the transfer case nuts out, you're gonna have to take this thing off. There's just 4 bolts in it, here, here, and here. You can get the 2 out, and then you have to take these out. These are 15mm. Take one on this side, one on this side. Take this off. Those are 15mm. These are 16mm. So, yep. And then after that, we're gonna undo this bolt. Then there's another one on this side. This bolt, and then we'll pop this linkage off, and then we'll start undoing transfer case nuts. After you undo these 2 bolts here, this thing will hang down, and then you'll have to take this piece right here to attach it right here on the transfer case shift lever. You just have to take a screwdriver, and you'll have to just stick it up on here like this, and then pry that out of there. And then you'll have to go up there inside the truck, and then undo the shift knob, and get the boot off of it, and then you just pull it down from the bottom. Or you can, you'll have to pull it down from the bottom. And then after that, now we've got our transfer case nuts pretty easy to reach. We can go ahead and start undoing them, and then we'll go ahead and pull this transfer case out. Okay, so before you take the transfer case nuts off, you're going to want to take your jack and put it underneath of the transmission first, and then take it off of the transfer case. It really helps if you have a transmission jack. If you don't have one, I definitely recommend you get one. It just makes it much easier, especially whenever you're trying to pull the transmission out. But yeah, and then on this transfer case shift knob or shift handle, we ended up just taking the whole boot off. There was just a bunch of screws all around the edge, and then we just slid the whole boot down through the bottom. And then, yep, so now we're gonna just go ahead and take the nuts off, get this other jack out of our way, and then we're going to just take the transfer case off. How I take the transfer case off is I just kind of just get up underneath and bench press the thing. You may or may not be able to do that. If you can't, you might have to find a second person to maybe help you. It's definitely going to be difficult because you have to like tilt it at an angle to take the stress off of it, and then slide it back. That'd definitely be difficult to do without like with a jack. That would definitely be difficult. So I find it easiest to just lay on your back, get underneath of it, square up on it, bench press the thing, and then slide it back, drop it onto your chest, and then drop it down slide it off onto the concrete. But yep, so we're gonna go ahead and get this thing off. One more tip here is I like to use a ratchet wrench to undo all these. I think it's just the easiest tool to use. And for this top one, you can only get like a little bit of a turn on it. But it helps if you lower your transmission jack down just a little bit, We'll lower it down as much as you can. You don't really want to lower it down too much just because you don't want to tear the motor mounts up there. They have like a rubber inside of them, so you don't want to tear them. So you want to only lower it down just enough to where you can get a little bit of a turn on this, and then just keep backing it out until they're all out. Yep. Okay, so I got the transfer case out. Now it's just going to be disconnecting all of our transmission lines, and then we've also got fuel lines there too. It's good to just go ahead and disconnect them since we are pulling the motor too. And then you're going to want to pull your dipstick out, and then of course all your plugs and stuff like that, and your shift linkage. You're going to have to undo all of that stuff to where it's basically just the bell housing bolts, and then yep, that'll be it. Okay, so after you get most everything else off, try to get close down here for you. There's a little window right there. It should be a 10mm bolt. You just pop that little cover plate off, and then you can access the torque converter bolts from there. So you want to go ahead and roll the motor over, and you can do that. The front, one of the crank bolts, or one of the harmonic balancer bolts, or if you have a tool like I do, you can use this. It's called a barring tool. You just stick it there's two holes where that cover plate is, and you just stick this in there and then crank it with your ratchet, and it rolls the motor over. So that makes it real handy. I think this thing was like $10 on eBay. So yeah, if you want one, it's definitely handy if you do these often. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Go ahead and get all the torque converter bolts out, and then yeah, I still need to get the dipstick out. That dipstick is held on with one of the bell housing bolts. So whenever I get the bell housing bolts, I'll go ahead and that'll be the first one I'll do, and I'll just pop the dipstick out. After you get that one bell housing bolt out with the dipstick on it, it just pulls right out. You should just be able to yank on it, and it should come right out. But yep, it should be it. This is why I like the barring tool. I can just crank it. And there we go. That just works every time. Every time I need to do it, I just crank it over, and then I just go ahead and break that one loose, and then pull it out, and then go ahead and crank the rest out. It made it a lot easier for me. I mean, I understand most every time I do this, I can't pull the fender off, and it's quite a bit of work. But on this one, it's a junk truck, so I pulled the fenders off anyway, so I might as well. Makes it easier on this job, so makes it really easy to get to these bell housing bolts. And if you don't want to lay on the ground and do it, yeah, that's the easier way to do it right there, is to pull the fender off. But it is a lot of work. You have to pull quite a few things off, and there's a lot of wires and stuff that got those little push locks attached to the fender. So yep, I'll go ahead and get these torque converter bolts out, and then I'll go down to the bottom, and I'll show you pulling out the bell housing bolts. This is the tools I use to get the torque converter bolt out. This little bitty extension with this right here. This is a 16mm is the size of the bolts, and I like to use just a short socket with this little bitty extension. It gives me just enough room to get outside the bell housing and not be like right up against it, and then it's not too long to where you like lose leverage on it. I break it loose with this ratchet. It's a 90-tooth ratchet, so that helps a lot. And then I just back them out the rest of the way after I broke them loose with this Milwaukee ratchet. This thing is the handiest thing ever. This is definitely one of my best purchases. I use it all the time. It's probably my most used tool. But yeah, so now we're gonna go ahead and get the rest of the transmission bolts out. They should be 14mm. Yeah, the first one I'm going to get out is that transmission dipstick bolt, like I said earlier, and then I'll go ahead and pop the rest of them out. So I'll show you whenever I get the rest of them out. Another tip here, most of these transmission jacks I think come with a bungee strap or something to hold the trans on, but if yours is broke off, or maybe it doesn't even come with one, ratchet strap the transmission to the jack. That way it can't fall off on top of you or anything. It's pretty sturdy for the most part. It also just makes it to where whenever you push on the jack, it moves the transmission. So it's definitely helpful. It's kind of a bear if it falls off. It's pretty annoying. So yeah, ratchet strap it to the trans. Works good. So whenever you're doing these bell housing bolts, sometimes it's easiest to just get a really long set of extensions, and those bolts are 14 millimeter. But just to get a really long extension and extend all the way up there, and then bust them all loose like that and zip them all out, you can get both sides like that. You might have to drop the transmission down just a little bit, just to where you can kind of get up on top of them. But yeah, so now we got them all out, and we got all of our lines loose. We got everything loose, so we should be able to just pull the transmission out now. But yep, we'll go ahead and pull it out now. Okay, so the transmission is out. It was sitting on the jack still. In order to get this thing out from underneath, you're gonna have to either, one, jack up the truck really high, or two, jack it up kind of high, and then just take the transmission from off the jack onto the concrete. That's kind of sketchy to do that unless you got like two people to be able to pick up on it and then sit it down. But luckily for me, I work in a shop with a hoist, so I can just pick it up with the hoist, and then I don't have the bed on it either, so I just rolled it back a little bit, and then sometimes I'll pick up the whole rear end of the truck and then slide it out. But now that if I don't have the bed on it, I just pick it up right through this hole. So go ahead and go up with it. So that makes it easy for me, but yeah, for if you guys are going to be doing this, you probably won't have that luxury to have a hoist. If you do, awesome. If not, you're going to have to do one of those two things. Either take it off the jack onto the ground, or jack the truck up really high. But yeah, there we go. The transmission's out now. So basically all that's holding the engine now is just the motor mounts. So yeah, I took off both fenders, and now the motor mounts are down in there. I'm gonna have to get them out now, and then after I bust the motor mounts loose, I should just be able to grab it with the hoist and pull this thing right out of there. So yep, so far so good. Okay, so we got the motor out. I should have probably done a better job of video on what we did, but this cab is junk, so I did not really, I wasn't as careful as I normally am. Yeah, like this cab doesn't even have like a VIN number anymore. It's been pretty smashed up. So I didn't take the normal care I would, but what I did was undid all of the cab bolts, which right there was one cab bolt, two cab bolt, three cab bolts on this part. Remember we undid the other one earlier, so yeah, it's not in this right now. So I undid two on each side, took them completely out, and then the last one I just left it in to try to keep the cab in spot, and so it wouldn't like slide off the back of the cab mounts. Then I took a 2x4 or a 4x4 and a jack. I lifted the cab up and then chalked a 4x4. Chalked a 4x4 in there, and so that gave me enough room. You'll really want to do this. It's a lot easier than, because it's really annoying with these Cummins motors because they have the oil pan hits the cross member when you try to go forward, and then also these freaking motor mounts are just, I don't know, they're just annoying with how they sit down in here, and then the firewall, and then this overhang. It just makes it difficult to actually pull the motor out, and you'll end up crunching this part of your cab, and it's just really bad. So it's best to just take the extra time, pull your cab bolts out, lift up the front just enough, and then block it up. A 4x4's length should get you plenty to be able to pull it right up out of here. I had a old hook from a 6.7 Cummins that I used to pull this with, and then I just hooked to the manifold, which it's not ideal, but that's just what I used. And it works. So here's another little tip. So after or while you're taking stuff apart is best. But I have some of these trays that I use, and I just mark all of them. Like this says fender bolts. There isn't a, that's not supposed to be in there though. This is, it's crossed out, but transfer case nuts, bell housing bolts, your flex plate, torque converter bolts, cross member bolts. These are just some miscellaneous items that go on these go on the back of the bell housing. These are your battery box with bumper bolts. I just mark all these. You can also use plastic bags. That helps too. It helps to have a cart where it's nice and clean, and you can just drop everything. Most of these are already pre-marked from other trucks I've done. So I didn't have to go through and remark them even. I just reuse the trays, and that's what I really like about it. And they stack up nice. I can stack them like this, and they pack up pretty well, and I can keep them out of the way. And then whenever I'm ready to go back together for it, everything's pretty organized. I like to just use one cart, and it just keeps everything organized. It's really nice. And I'm gonna stack all my other random pieces on it too, like this here, this here, this here, headlights, everything. Most of it I can get onto a cart. Of course, I got some big items like the transmission, transfer case, but that I'll just set off to the side or set on another cart. I've got a few carts around here that I'll get cleared off and set them on there. But it just helps to stay organized. You'll do yourself a big favor. You can get away with it sometimes if you're with not organizing, if you're pretty familiar with these trucks. Like I've taken quite a few of these apart now, and I'm pretty familiar with them now. But like the first few times I messed with them, and I didn't know where anything went, and I didn't recognize any of the bolts, it was kind of a mess. So I was trying to piece things back together and look it up, and it was just a pain. So this really helps, especially if you got a slow project to where it's like it's going to be a few months before you put it back together. Even I'll get mixed up sometimes if it's been a few months, especially with something it's like, especially if it's something that you don't really take apart every single time. But yeah, so just thought that would help. I'll throw that in here. Yeah. Alrighty guys, so I've got this motor out now, of course. So the last thing to do is, for me, the other truck that I have, it does not have any of this wiring harness or anything. So I'm going to be using the wiring harness out of this one because it's a complete wiring harness. It'd just be easier, and I'm going to swap it over to that truck. So most of y'all probably won't have to do that, so I'm not going to video that part. But yeah, so I've got to swap all the wiring harness over, and then basically just drop the other motor in. But like I said, I'm going to reseal that motor. I'm probably going to do new rear main seal, oil pan gasket, valve cover gaskets, timing cover gasket, or yeah. So that's what I'm going to do to that one. And yeah, so this will just be one video. I don't know how to edit or anything, so I'm just gonna try not to make the videos super long, but I will video putting that other motor in. But yeah, So I'll just have to get that other motor cleaned up. I might video that. We'll see though. But yeah, this motor, I'm just gonna end up parting it out, and or this truck. I mean, I'm just gonna end up parting the rest of it out. Or I do have, I don't know if y'all can see back there, I have a 50s model truck. This frame, really, I grinded off a few spots here. I'll show y'all. It's on the other side. Yeah, it's really, if you grind it off, I mean, the frame is still pretty solid, and especially where right up there, it's boxed in. As long as that doesn't have any rust on it, I may end up using this frame for that truck. I would like that truck to be dual rear wheel, so I'm gonna have to find a rear end out of it, or maybe I can do some swapping with somebody and trade this rear end, this single rear wheel, and trade that for a dual rear end, and then just drop that cab onto this frame. That just seems like it's a completely different project, but I just figured I could use parts. I mean, I got this frame, and the only other thing I would do with it is either part it out or scrap it. So, but yeah, so I'll probably end up doing that with that truck. I'll probably have to cut down the frame or shorten it just to make the cab match out with because this is an extended cab, and then that is a single cab. There it is. That is a single cab. So trying to make everything match up, or I may end up just saying screw that and trying to find a single rear wheel, because I still need a motor for that truck. I was originally, whenever I picked up these two projects, I picked them up. Well, I was looking for a motor or for a parts truck for that build, and then I saw this. I found a truck, and then I found another truck that needed a motor, so it's like I can combine them, and I didn't pay, too much for them. So it was like, if I can sell this truck, I'll have money to put towards this truck. So that's what I'm doing. But yeah, I'll end up posting more videos about putting that motor back in that other truck, and then I'll also be posting about that. So if y'all want to see that build, or you want to see anything, I just try to post informative content. I'm just a normal guy. I don't really know how to edit or anything, so the quality of the videos will be kind of meh, but I'll try to do my best to just try to show you guys what I do and try to make it informative and helpful for y'all, and then also just see a sweet build. I mean, that's going to be a pretty sweet build whenever I'm done with it. And also this other second gen truck that I have, it's going to be a pretty sweet truck whenever I get done with it. It's got a lift on it. It's got some big tires on it, so it's going to look pretty sweet whenever it's done. Plus it's just a pretty clean overall truck, so it'll be something you guys can appreciate. But yeah, so y'all stay tuned for that, and if you want, subscribe if you like to see these old Cummins trucks and you want to see more truck builds like that. I also have another third gen truck that I've built. It's a pretty quick truck. It's full manual valve body. It's a lot of fun, so I'll probably end up making videos on that too. So if y'all like that content, y'all can subscribe and follow my channel. So, yep. See y'all later.